Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My speaker today is Katie Ziskind, who's going to be speaking with us about some good first date ideas. Katie, can you tell us a little bit about your work and what you do?
Yes. So I'm so happy to be here, and this is just such a fun topic. I love talking about dating and dating ideas. But I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I also work a lot with helping people build meaningful connections in playful, creative, holistic ways. And I run a group practice called Wisdom Within Counseling. So I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Katie, what are some good first date ideas? Like, what does a good first date consist of? What are the necessary parts for a good first date?
That's a great question. And I think, dating can be different for your culture or for, if
Mhm.
you're, depending on your gender as well. So I think there's some elements that are really important to have in a first date. And those are core values of what you're trying to create in the relationship. So if you want something committed or something, fun, incorporate those elements into your first date. So, if you are an adrenaline junkie, try inviting someone to go paintballing or for an outdoor hike to give them a taste of some of your hobbies. Also, for first dates, a great thing to do is a day date. Go to get a local bagel and a coffee and go for a walk outdoors, after. You
That's
want to
a great one. I feel like a lot of people feel like a date has to be at night, and
right.
it doesn't have to be at
It
nighttime.
doesn't have to be, and it doesn't have to be too expensive. You're essentially, before you're actually romantically dating, you're getting to know them as a friend. So you want to see if they're good friend material first, where they're
Mhm.
honest. How do they do with a waitress or a waiter? How are they respectful? Do they tip? These are values that you want to see, how someone is, or, how do they handle being stuck in traffic, or, if there's a line at a restaurant, so you want to see how people are, see if they'll complement your personality and be able to help you be a better person. Um, and I would also say a public place is important.
Yeah.
Um, and if you're looking for a relationship, I would not recommend, being too sexual on the first date. You really want to, kind of incorporate some of those elements of commitment. Um,
Mhm.
and for some people it can feel so good to express themselves in those ways, but sometimes it can also lead to feeling too attached to someone too soon, and you might find out there's a red flag later on. So it's better to sometimes get to know them as a friend first if you're looking to build a fun relationship.
Well, and right now we're still dealing with the pandemic, right? It's people
Right.
don't have a choice most of the time, at least, to
Yeah, and you could do
do too
even
much
like
being together and touching on the first date.
yeah. But I think that you could also do a video first date, like a FaceTime. A lot of times, our culture hypersexualizes some of these things, but you can just, read a page out of a book to someone, as you go to bed, or kind of build this old fashioned type of connection where you're saying good morning on the phone if you can't see each other, or you're saying good night, for even 10 minutes talking on the phone before you go to bed to build that relationship and, remind that person, hey, I'm thinking of you. You're important to me.
So that's great. What doesn't work on a first date? I mean, either now, right, again, while we're dealing with this pandemic, or in general, what are some things that like really just generally do not work on a first date
Good
or
question.
no-goes?
Right, no nos. So I mean, I definitely wouldn't push too far. So maybe if you're in a public place, you might say, if you're interested in going somewhere else, you might say, hey, would you like to go? You could give choices, like my place or Starbucks, right? And then get a reading. If they don't want to go to your place, don't be pushy, be respectful. um
And that also doesn't mean someone doesn't like you or
right.
want to go out on a second date with you just because they don't want to go back to your place.
That's a great point. I'm so glad you said that, because they might, just want some time to themselves at home and had a good time with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I would also, kind of get an idea of what your expectations are. So maybe if say you're a runner, you know, you might not want to invite your brand new date on a 14-mile run if that's your everyday plan, right? You
Right.
wake up, you do that, you love that, but you want to, you know, maybe you just go for a light walk with your date, right? Because you're trying to step into their world. You know,
Yeah.
so we have to have expectations of understanding where people are. And you know, maybe if you love hot yoga, maybe you go to a gentle foundation class with your date.
Yeah, I love that. You're bringing someone into your world, but you're not just like trying to, like scoop them up and shove them into your world if they don't necessarily fit completely in there. You want to sort of help them be in your world, but also help get into theirs a little bit and see what they like and what they do and what's.
Yes, and I love that too, of like seeing what they like, you know, and dating with children is another thing of, you know, understanding expectations around, you know, if you are not going to meet their children, they might still be able to have a great relationship with you without having, you know, might even be more anxiety provoking to have you meeting their children too. So sometimes when people date with children, you want to talk about, are they looking for a relationship or are they looking for something casual? You really want to have that discussion of what are we going for in this relationship in advance before, you know, you start to get intimate. Or sometimes you might end up with some hurt feelings or some confusion. Both people might be hurt and confused because they're thinking they're getting something else because they've never had a conversation yet. It's just never been talked about. So
Mhm.
it's so good to have that dialogue of like, what do you want? What are your goals for the next 6 months? Do you see yourself being in a monogamous relationship or an open relationship? Are you seeing other people? Are you texting other people? What type of relationship do you want with me, right? Because a lot of people, when they're not, if you're not asking those questions, you really don't know those answers.
Yeah. And that may not necessarily be a first date
Right,
conversation
right.
or first
Like,
date deal breaker, but really important, right? Really important
yes,
point of view.
yes. And I think the first date too is so much about being fun and just like, you know, getting out there and getting confident. And I would say, don't make any judgments on a first date, you know, like you're still in you're kind of that friendship place of, you know, and notice. This is also a wonderful place for you to notice if triggers are coming up. I know for me, one time when I was dating and the person who I went out on the date with had the same exact make and model of the car as my ex-boyfriend. And
Mm,
I immediately said, oh no, I could never be with them, right? But who
sure.
knows? They could have been a great person. But you know, so our mind will limit us sometimes. So seek counseling, go to therapy if you find that. You know, I've had people come to me and said like their shoes were just horrible. I couldn't be with them. And so those things, notice those things, because those we would call maybe a bit, you know, anxiety or even irrational, right? Maybe give them more chances. If you've been hurt before, acknowledge that hurt, but remember to live with an open heart as well and be playful.
Yeah, and I think that question of like what's a real red flag versus what is just like a kind of stylistic, right, red flag or like a on the surface kind of red flag. That's not really something that runs
Ooh,
deep.
I mean, yeah, like red flags. I mean, I know for some with my clients is like how like measurable red flags, like versus like more taste, right? So like sometimes people will say, "Oh, I like them tall, I like them short." It's like, okay, well, people can be jerks despite their height, right? So it's like let's notice deeper. How do you feel? You know, and also, you know, knowing that when you're on a first date, the best thing that you can do is be emotionally vulnerable and be genuine. And sarcasm sometimes can, if someone doesn't know your personality yet, sometimes that can be a protective mechanism and actually prevent that person from fully liking you or getting to know your real self. So don't be afraid to be your authentic self, and be bold and be brave. But notice if you have protective mechanisms like that too that might keep you away from, you know, getting a second date.
Yeah. Okay, great. Katie, thank you so much for talking to us about, some really good ideas for first dates and also some things to really stay away from for first dates. Where can people find you if they want to get a hold of you?
Um, if you wanted to work with me for coaching or just wanted to learn more, you can visit and book a free 30-minute phone call to build meaningful relationships emotional connection and a deeper sense of intimacy in your life at wisdomwithinct.com.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.